I am by trade a meteorologist, and so I've been forecasting hurricanes and tornadoes, chasing them, they've chased me back. So that's why I left Oklahoma. The last 3 tornadoes chased me. I'm just really happy with that. And the one that's probably most famous is the Moore tornadoes. Yeah, I was running away from that one. So we have here a meteorologist who does computer science, who does machine learning, and I'm going to be talking about something that's so unintuitive. You're going to be like, well, why is he looking into this form of forecasting? Because it gets really, really crazy when we talk about scenario planning.
Okay, we didn't plan for this. Yeah, that's an inside joke, by the way.
Or we can just hit the next slide.
Yay.
Okay, 1997, the first book of Harry Potter came out, and if you remember, Hagrid had to knock on the door and come to Harry Potter and say, "You're a wizard, Harry." Try to find that quote online, but it's really hard. I think I got it right. But then again, it sounds like a Carly Rae Jepsen song. Hey, I just met you, and this is crazy. My name is Hagrid, and you're a wizard, Harry. So this probably might fall into the fake news category. But what happened was Harry Potter started a huge franchise of the Wizarding World. And we have the 7 books of Harry Potter, we have the 8 movies, and again, it's really hard to just find, you're a wizard, Harry. But if you're a wizard, you really have to do math. And a lot of people think forecasting has to do a lot of math. And if you remember Professor Trelawney, you don't think she was a mathematician. So if forecasting doesn't have to be as hard as divinations. Okay? You don't have to have a tea leaf concoction or looking into a globe. But it is something that you can look at from a mathematical perspective, which we all know how to do, but we don't know how to do it in this new context of scenario planning. So here we have the 2nd book of Harry Potter, and the father of scenario planning, Wade, had his son find out that he had the first American edition. Right now, the purchase price that he had at 1990 when the book came out was $19.99 plus tax. $300, I'm going to go here so my shadow doesn't block it. $300 for the selling price at 2004 when the son discovered it. He went to his dad and said, Dad, look at this. If I wait till 2024, I can make $100,000 off this book. And he shows the math. It's a simple linear algebra. This is what we do. We assume everything's going to continue linearly. I don't know about you, but we're close to 2024. I sold my book so I can have ebooks and not have so much waste, and I didn't get nowhere near $300. But what if we looked at it in 2 different ways? Based off of the popularity of the movies and the popularity of the books. At the time, he was looking at 2004, it was just the 4th book coming out. He knew that his book would probably gain more value as you have the movies that come out, as J.K. Rowling doesn't keel over and die like Sue Scraton and didn't finish the Z book for the Alpha Murders. That's very, very sad. But J.K. Rowling's still writing books. We didn't know that we had Fantastic Beasts franchise, and though that might be a little bit contentious in this crowd, I like the books. I think Newt is a better hero than Harry. But that's why I had to say it. Harry just happened to fall into the hero role. Newt just doesn't want to be the hero. But I'm not going to go into that. But he did not know that there was going to be the franchise series. So they said, okay, well, if we have an access and we look at it as two different ways, the books could do really well, the movies could flop. We know a lot of scenarios where that's the case. Or the movies could be really good, and the books could be really good. Or J.K. Rowling could have just written The Cursed Child, and everybody would have hated it unless you're a Whovian. And then we also have, well, what if the movies are good, but the books sucked? They all have different stories to tell of how you can maximize the book value. He then said, what are some key performance indicators? Well, the first one you can think of is the movies are doing great. We have, each movie comes out as a blockbuster hit. It keeps allowing to have more people show up. What about the books? The books sell out. There's longer lines. I know I waited in Colorado, actually on 49th Street Mall in Boulder, to pick up the 7th book. And I read that in a week because I'm a very slow reader. But I read it nonstop. And I hope I don't have any spoilers here. We are past that. In this group, I'm guessing, right? It's been out for quite a while. But what are some limitations? At the time, in 2004, it was stated that there's only going to be 7 books. Then came out The Cursed Child, out of nowhere. And then comes Fantastic Beasts. So that's not into consideration when Wade and his son were looking at this example. But there was also 8 movies that were also announced. So they knew that at one point, if they wanted to maximize everything, the hard limit is at the final movie when it's being released, since the movies lag behind the books. Then, if a book or a movie were to drop in value, the best thing that they said was, let's sell it now, because you might not get as much value as you could possibly get if all books and all movies were successful. At the end of the day, the limits are all gone because the 8th movie came out. He was able to sell a book for $1,600. Different than that $100,000 that the son originally planned. But that's a really good level of investment. So scenario planning has 10 steps, and we're going to go by that. And I want to give you the tool set here on how to do scenario planning for yourself. And then in my talk with Superstruct, we're going to look at Superstruct, what it represented, how it's the future of teaching and way of critical thinking, and then apply the same techniques there in a work session. So we need a friend to challenge. Who, what, when, where, why. My favorite question is why. Little kids are really good at this. Eventually you get so ingrained in the details that there's no more to go. And that's what you want to do. Because you want to get everything down to the final point. Keep asking those whys. And if you don't have a framed question, what are you going to look up? What are you going to research about? Same thing with the dissertation. Same thing with the master's thesis. You need that defined problem. If not, you're going to solve world hunger. And you'll never finish. Gather information. One of the best questions that came out of Wade's interviews is if you can ask, let's say here we have about 100 people, right, Kay?
We have less than that, but we can go with 100.
So we'll say 100, it's an easy number. Wade would suggest that for 100 people attending this conference, there should be 400 interviews, a 4-to-1 ratio. And 400 people would have to ask answer the question, if you could see something 10 years into the future, what 3 things would you look for to understand why we are there at that moment in time? And then you can ask other questions. What would be a great question here is, we are 10 years in the future. If we were to write the script backwards, what were some of the things that led us to this future? So we're thinking about how we want to go into the next 5, 10 years, succeeding as our group. What does that look like to us? What milestones do we need to hit for it to be successful? What milestones do we need to avoid? What legislation? What other information that we need to compile? So you can have a lot of information here. 4-to-1 ratio for interviews is great. You want to avoid doing too much because you can also have analysis paralysis. You won't get anything more out of the next amount. Appreciative inquiry is really great at this. Eventually, you ask so many questions and you get so many of the same answers repeated so many times eventually that adding another person, you're not going to get any more value. But when we're looking at that 4-to-1 ratio, we're looking at asking people at all levels, from the students, from conference goers, from deans, from professors, maybe a president or provost or two. What does this look like for us in the future? Ask those questions. So I like the driving forces because they help us frame our question a bit more. And there are a bunch of them. Here are some of them. A lot of the ones that are easier to remember is if it has AL at the end, like environmental, societal. Those are things you want to know and say, okay, well, what things society is going to impact us? What about governmental? What policies? Is there going to be a Common Core 2.0? Or is there going to be a retraction of Common Core? Are we moving into a new area where our research is going to be taken out of hand or out of context or not believed because it's going to be assumed that it's all p-hacking? And how do we address that? All these things are being discussed in the editorial part pages of journals. Actually, for the p-hacking one, came out, about a year ago in the American Statistical Association editorial, where they talked about using other metrics besides P for statistical significance, so that you're not overvaluing the P value in saying whether or not something could be replicable or reliable. So these are conversations that are occurring in the editorial sections of journal articles. So this is a great way to look for ideas. Again, think of anything with AL in it. Those are areas and dimensions that you want to look into the future and how that might impact us. Once we have that, we need to define it as an either or, similar to the Harry Potter. You can either have a book that sells more value, or that sells more and more volumes, or you can have a book that completely flops and gets critical critiques on YouTube and nobody else wants to buy it, like The Cursed Child. Sorry, I'm going to keep backing on that one. But I love that one so much. I'm moving it. I love the fact that there's time travel involved with everything. It messes up the timeline. With that said, what is that either or for us? And then pick 2 of those that are the most critical and the most uncertain. That is how this is going to work. If you can easily predict something's going to happen, why are you doing this exercise? You should just do, the linear algebra stuff. So you pick your scenarios, 1 and 2, either or, and they're not necessarily a black or white. Nothing ever in life is black and white. It's all various shades of gray. But just like the number line, 0, then you have negative numbers and you have positive numbers. You can bifurcate a number line into 2, negative or positive. Same thing with most scenarios. Pick the 2, again, that are the most highest uncertainty, and that have the greatest impact to you. Then start creating stories. This is the fun part. This is where you start to get your creative juices flowing. You get to say, now I get to be J.K. Rowling, except without the red hair, without all the money, without the whole fan base, and maybe without the Twitter followers. But here you can write it. And then write it in a story format. This is an exercise that's supposed to be done with people, and we have to do something that's different than machine learning. Machine learning can pull numbers and data, analyze text, but it can't craft a story yet. That is our strength as of right now in the way the research is going. Craft that story of what each quadrant represents. To help you get started, who and what will be affected and how? What does this mean financially? And what are the disadvantages and advantages? If you look at scenario planning for Sony Walkman or for the Kodak film company, Fuji as well, they couldn't keep up with technology. Technological advances was one of their scenarios that they couldn't keep up with. They were so stuck in thinking everything was going to be the same, and even though they had some development teams working on something in the technological realm, their competitors were moving much faster and replaced them. Kodak went belly up. I still have a Kodak, or actually 2 Kodak cameras, and I don't use them. My phones are my cameras. In fact, Zoom is a camera right now. Shout out to Zoom. I like you guys. You need to be able to say, with at least enough certainty, if something is going to impact you tremendously or not. And the only way to do that is by crafting these kind of stories. Then, with anything, get some more research. Validate that your assumptions are true. Go back to your stakeholders and ask them, is this something that we need to really worry about? If they say no, go back to drawing board. If they say yes, but I don't see this scenario panning out this way, it might go out a little bit more differently, incorporate that feedback. This is an iterative process. Then, what are your possibilities? This is the fun stuff. This is what you get to now say, okay, we have our defined action plan. We're going to now define our KPIs. We're going to be defining what action steps we can move forward with. And then from there, we get to kind of say, okay, well, do 2 quadrants or 3 quadrants have the same task? They'll position us no matter what scenario happens. And start doing that one. Because at least you know that you're moving forward with it. But also, if it does have a similar task between scenarios, then you need to change your scenarios. Because that's not uncertain enough for you. You know what to do next. That's why this is highlighted in red. Are there any strategies that overlap different scenarios? Change your scenarios if they do. But start implementing them, because at least that one scenario that you thought was important has a strategy that you can implement no matter what. The KPIs. Define when, where, how, each value that you're looking for. Has to be quantifiable. Have like SMART goals. You can't run a marathon the day before. I've been training slowly for the Disney marathon. I'm not going to go do the Disney marathon on January 10th or 11th this year, or next year, and start training for it on the 10th. That's not going to work. I'm going to be so sore. You can do that for a 5K, but not a marathon. So what are the things? Move backwards in time. Ask yourself, 10 years from now, if this scenario plays out, what key indicators can I look for to see that this happened? I go 9 years, all the way back to the current present year. And every year, reiterate. We're not in a fixed point of time here. And time is all wibbly wobbly, but if we can move forward, sorry, I'm such a geek. But I feel like I can talk to you guys about this kind of stuff and put some geeky energy. You guys just seem to be that type of guy. But go back to it every year and revise your plan. Do you now know more information that you're more certain about one scenario versus another? And that's great. Change it up to another scenario. Or are you still doing business as usual and not realizing the implements of any change? Start doing your changes now. Use your key indicators to help you identify what your next steps by going in this iterative process once a year. So, again, you don't have to be divination specialists or wizards to forecast the future. We don't have to have multiple processors in our heads, like supercomputers or machine learning, to do all this mathematical algorithms. We can look forward and move it through scenario-based forecasting. Again, something completely different than meteorology, because we use meteorological models. We look at the weather. We try to build mental models on that. We do forecasts on that. Same thing we do with machine learning. We try to build models with it. This is a completely different way of forecasting. But it's still forecasting, and it's still forecasting in the future. Now I know here that we know that correlation is not causation. We also know that extrapolating and interpolating are not going to give us the same results that we want. And that's okay. We can leave that for numerical number crunching. But for scenario planning, that's different. And that can give us an edge whether we thrive or go to the trash heap of history. So I know one thing for sure in this group. We're going to have fun. We're going to network a ton. We're going to be exchanging a lot of ideas, business cards, and maybe the occasional vodka bottle with oil and vinegar, as we did at my table. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak with you guys and sharing about scenario forecasting. If you want to put this in practice, I'll be giving a talk on Superstruct, and we can apply some of this in that.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm going to see if anybody has any questions, but